Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters. Strange and horrifying events befell the doomed crew as they attempt to survive the ocean's voyage from Transylvania to London. Stalked each night by a merciless presence on board, a legendary vampire known as Dracula. This is our raw reaction review for The Last Voyage of the Demeter. Alrighty, Luke, we are coming down to the end of the summer months here. As I said in my Meg 2 review, we got a couple of gems just as we're walking out of what I would say was a pretty successful summer. You know, a couple of good horror flicks here and there. Honestly, a pretty bang-up year, even compared to 2022. I'd say 2023 is doing a good job of keeping the pace. But this one I know we've been looking forward to. We saw that trailer real early on. I think, was it the end of last year that we saw it, or was it early this year?
I think early this year.
I think it might have been January when we saw it. Either way, doesn't matter. We were huge on it. We talked about it on the Sunday Scaries about how we had no idea this was coming, and it just sucked us right in. You are a fan of the director. You're definitely more familiar with his work than I am. I've seen Troll Hunter. And I have seen The Autopsy of Jane Doe. It has been some time, though. But yes, I was definitely pulled in by this concept and by this cast. How do you say your feelings and thoughts on The Last Voyage of the Demeter?
I was right there with you as you talked about it. We mentioned it in the short. This is something we've been anticipating for months now. And I really think it goes back to the concept. You know, I think vampires are at that stage of where we're at with zombies right now, where if you want to tell a Dracula tale or a just vampire tale in general, it's going to be about the concept. And I think something like this was so intriguing because it's set on a ship. It's a period piece in a sense. It really has a different vibe than what we're used to seeing. So going into it, I was hoping that they were going to make the most out of that in terms of the tension and just the aesthetic in general. And I think they really knocked that portion out of the park. I really love the time on the ship and with the crew overall. So I would say, did this live up to everything that I was anticipating? Probably not. I mean, it's one of those ones that I built it so much up in my head that it was just impossible to measure up, because I think overall this is a pretty well done flick.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I definitely think that I think definitely went into this more excited than I think most are going to. So maybe that kind of comes into our initial thoughts and feelings here. But I do want to say up front that I did really enjoy this movie.
Yes.
I think that this is definitely one that I want to own. This is one that I would definitely recommend just coming right out of the gate. But, you know, we do have to talk about a couple of things that I thought with some tighter improvements, I could have walked out loving this movie. There was a few things in here that, did kind of make me not necessarily squirm or feel any type of way, more or less just kind of some things that are a little tougher to swallow than others. But one of those things that is not tough to swallow, and I think some of the best parts of this film is the cast. And I gotta say, Corey Hawkins leads this film as Clemens. Fantastic. I've loved him since Straight Outta Compton. He's somebody that honestly I thought would be in a lot more huge roles by now, just because he came right out of the gate, basically portraying someone as infamous in the music industry as Dr. Dre and doing such a wonderful job. But he kind of went on a little bit of an interesting path of playing some side characters. He kind of shows up in bit parts here and there. But then he did some work on television. But this is really his movie. This is really the first time I want to say that he really gets to really lead a film, and I thought that he was excellent. I really enjoyed the character of Clemens. I thought that he was both interesting, effective, and overall just a main character that is easy to get behind and is easy to follow through, and you enjoy it, and you also understand his struggles and a lot of what he does. And I think that Corey Hawkins really did a lot of legwork for this character.
Absolutely, and I was so excited to see him as our lead throughout this. And you mentioned struggles there. I think looking at the connective tissue that they put behind in the backstory that they put behind the Clemens character is something that you sympathize with and really makes you want to root for this character. And that's one of the big positives of this film in general. I think all the characters in here, for the most part, have some sort of backstory or some sort of connective tissue that we can relate to. And I think that really adds to the building of the tension and those interactions that we see on board. And, we're not going to get deep. We're not going to deep dive into it, but there is a lot of tension that is brought from just Clemens coming in as a new member of the crew to this already, the Demeter already kind of has this flow of each different character and what they do. So when things start happening and our supernatural force is injected into the situation, everyone's pointing fingers, and of course, who are you going to go to? And I think that really just adds so much to the actual journey of the story here, and you never know where it's going to go next.
Absolutely, yeah. This definitely did leave me guessing in a lot of parts. And then I want to also point out, I'm going to butcher her name, but Asling Fren CCOC. I'm sorry, I couldn't get it. But she plays Anna. Yeah, she plays Anna in the film. She does a fantastic job. You will probably remember her, Luke, if you did not catch it. That she was Claire from The Nightingale.
Yes.
So she is the lead in there. I had not seen her in anything since that film, so it was nice to see her pop up. I did not catch that in the trailer, so when we're sitting there through the film, I just kind of realized, I connected the dots. Probably right when she becomes more present in the film.
Yeah.
In that scene, I was like, oh, hey, that's her. But no, she does a great job. I loved what they did with her as her backstory and kind of her connection with Dracula and everything, and what her purpose was. I thought was all really creative, really fun stuff. And then Liam Cunningham as Captain Elliot is also another great performance there. A lot of emotion coming from him. A very different kind of captain than you see normally portrayed in a lot of these kind of late 18th century kind of ship or military ship movies, in a sense that even though they're not military but merchant ships, they tend to be more rough and gruff and hard asses and stuff. But he is a very kind, very compassionate captain, and it was a joy to see that on screen. And I think that those two were a wonderful addition. But for me, before I pass it off to you, I gotta say, I think the next best standout here is our boy David Dashmaltian. Just absolutely wonderful to see him playing a very different character than what we've seen. He has such fucking range, dude. It's so good. I know after he was on screen for maybe about 5 minutes, I leaned over to you and just said, just this guy is so good, dude. I love seeing him getting more and more roles in Hollywood. I could see him in every fucking movie at this point.
Absolutely. And, the subtlety in his performances and what he does bring and the diversity of each different thing that we do see him in, I think makes you love him that much more. I think that this cast, it's going to be fun to revisit this film in 5 years to be able to look at the cast here and be like, man, they really did put together a hell of a cast, and just the interactions here, because that's the thing here where these performances, I mean, I don't necessarily know if I'm going to go back and say, oh my gosh, the range here was tremendous, but everything they put together was so cohesive and lets you live in that moment and so believable for the time period that it allows you to kind of suspend that disbelief for that 2-hour runtime and feel like you're engulfed into the story. And the dramatic portion of this and the tension that they do bring makes you forget sometimes that there's a supernatural force lingering in what you did get into this film for.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I one of the things I do want to highlight before we move on from the cast here and maybe start getting into some of our criticisms of the film would be this is kind of the best, I guess, place to really end this for me. It is just when we're talking about the cast. It comes to Javier Botet. He plays Dracula. And that is where I want to put my first real criticism that I would say made me have a hard time falling in love with this film. Now, his performance is great. I mean, it's a very physical performance. When you see him in the makeup and the practical effects, I mean, he looks wonderful. There is a sequence that I absolutely adore. You're on the deck at night, and a specific character sees him. I'm just trying to skirt over spoilers, but I think you know what I'm saying here. And they see him, and he's on the ground. Very creepy, very cool, wonderful scene. Built tension beautifully, and I think that he adds a lot to it. So I want to highlight that before I say, and I think you'll agree with me because we did talk about it for a little bit. Dracula works in some places, and in other places is a little bit meh as far as not performance wise, but appearance wise and delivery. And I gotta say that comes directly from kind of a poor mesh of CGI and practical effects. Again, I think the practical effects are strong when they're used, but they're kind of covering them with CGI in some spots, and it's very noticeable. And it's noticeable to the point where there are certain moments, I know I said one specifically to you involving some blood, that it really took me out. And I was just like, okay, yeah, it looks a little hokey. With further reflection, I do see this movie looking a little dated as far as Dracula goes within the next couple of years, just because the CGI really doesn't work for me when it comes to that character. And that kind of sucks because he is our central villain, and he is kind of a huge piece of this story.
Yeah, and I absolutely 100% agree with you on that. There are some movements and some questionable choices, I think, when you get into Dracula and the combination of the CGI that they do put in here, because some of the practical stuff looks great.
Oh, it's so good.
And
Yeah.
it's like, I really wish, I mean, it's no secret here. We always go back to it. It's like, I wish they would have made the most of the practical. I think there is a happy marriage between CGI and practical effects. I just don't think this film found it. And there's just some things where it's like, oh, that could have been really well done. There's a sequence toward the end involving Dracula, which I think was pretty creative, with a character falling and, as Dracula flies. But then I think they take it another step farther, and it does look heavily CGI to me. And it ends up taking me from a really cool sequence to a very, sequence that has taken me out of it. And I'm like, oh, well, that could have been really cool, but it just did not hit. And I think that is a lot of The Last Voyage of Demeter from the aspect of Dracula. There are things where I think less would have been more, but it seems like they try to take that next extra step, and that's where they lose me. There's just some things in here with movements and just staying with sequence a little too long in my book, and adding some CGI that takes me out of it.
Yeah, and I think that it's tough these days to get around it with big studio pictures like this, because it's like there is so much going on. Obviously, they're working with a lot of water, and they're working with a lot of practical sets, which I gotta say, going back to positives, the sets were amazing on this. I think like
Beautiful.
damn near everything that they worked on, as far as where the actors were, was a set and was real, and it felt like you were on a ship. They sold that really well, especially with the movements of the ship and just the constant like ebb and flow of, you could tell they were on water. It was really great attention to detail there. I thought that they nailed that aspect of it. And then, overall, I want to say that I think the look of the film is gorgeous. I think that it has a lot of great sweeping shots. You see some of them in the trailer, some very harrowing and epic shots on the water, where the ocean, as far as the CGI goes there, it looks wonderful.
Yeah.
But, again, I just think that when you get to Dracula, and it just seems like as the film progresses and he becomes more active, he gets a little less convincing. And, that's just tough really to go through the film and let bypass when it's a Dracula movie. It's a vampire story. And, I think that they could have completely gotten away with the practical effects. And I'm gonna say, even though it was cool and it was a good idea and there were some really cool shots of him flying and stuff, I think maybe it would have been cooler without the wings. I think maybe it would have been creepier, because again, going back to that scene that I slightly described, that was creepy, that was good, that was a nice build of tension. And I just think that overall that really, if they would have done that, that would have pushed me over the edge to absolutely adoring this film.
Yeah, and I'm gonna agree with you about the wings. I think I kept focusing in on that a lot of the times. There are some sequences where I think they reveal Dracula a little too much. They show him a lot, almost like full body. And there's one where he's specifically posing, and you do. For me, I kept focusing in on those wings, and I was like, I don't know necessarily if this character design, fits. I think it would have been more effective without the wings, because I think it would have been a little more unsettling, I think, from my point of view.
A little too bat-like in some aspects. He looks almost like a chicken. I'm sorry to say that, but like, there's scenes where he's really far away, or not necessarily really far away, but you get a real nice look at him, like you're saying. Like the image we're using for the background is wonderful, and if they would have kept it like that, very foreboding, very much like that, it would have been really effective. But like, he's really spread out, and you just see his skinny little legs, and you can't help but snicker a little bit at it. And again, it's just one of those things where it's like, it might come down to preference. Maybe some people really like this version of Dracula. I myself like more of a creature take on the character. It's something a little different than we've gotten, and I know, Luke, you definitely would be on board with that as well. I just think, like you said, character design wise, the way it's presented with the CGI left a bit to be desired, for sure.
Yeah, because from the stills that we had seen in just the trailer in general, I did not focus on the wings at all. I don't know if they were not really emphasized enough in the trailer or in the stills, because I didn't really notice them that much. But then as soon as the film, we started, showing Dracula more and more, it's, again, the only thing that I could focus on. I was like, well, this would have been just more effective without that. I think it would have been a little more unsettling, a little more jarring. But like you said, I kept getting those, and I know they were probably going for that bat-like creature, but I think it was, again, too bat-like, and the comparison is just right there in your face. And some people can be on board with it. I just don't think we were.
Yeah, and I think my last real big criticism that I have for the film, that it is something that I do want to mention. I said it to you guys outside of the theater. I enjoy, especially in horror revolving around monsters and creatures and things like this, is the perfect setup for it. I do like my foreplay. I like getting on into situations, getting to know our characters, really building the tension, ratcheting it up. Don't just throw them on the ship or throw them on anything and then immediately have them all getting attacked and stuff. Build it up, take your time. They do that here, but surprisingly, I think they do it a little too much. I think that they really kind of, at one point you think it's kicking off and then it slows back down, and then it kicks up again and then it slows back down. So it's like the pacing of this movie tends to really get inconsistent by like the end of, I want to say, the first act and into the second act. But it does pick itself back up, and we do get into a nice ebb and flow right on into the ending. And I think that overall it's something that I can definitely accept and still move past. But I just caught myself in the theater today just kind of going like, okay, let's kind of keep it moving, guys. Like, I get it. I enjoy my characters. We've gotten a lot of backstory with them, and that was all interesting and cool. It's just, I think that I got to the point where I'm like, we should really kind of keep progressing. Let's keep moving forward. You don't have to keep teasing me this much.
Yeah, and I think maybe they tend to sit in some scenes a little bit longer. I think this would have benefited maybe with one or two less cast members in it, just to kind of keep everything flowing. I think, if we shaved off maybe 15 minutes, I think that would help the pacing a lot, just to kind of get things moving a little quicker. But I do like that the tension they build, the characters that they do lay out here. It's very much a journey film where, the characters are in a completely different spot, from that beginning to the end. And, you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting. I think maybe at some points you're waiting a little bit too long. But, overall, I didn't, I wasn't sitting in the theater twiddling my thumbs waiting for the next event to happen. It did keep me engaged enough to keep moving forward and, just waiting for this big payoff. And one of the things that I do also like in this film is, I mentioned this is a journey film. This is also almost a journey film where I think Dracula as a character, where, we almost do see these different sides. It's a very primal beginnings kind of character, as we see for the most part. But then I think, we do progress a little bit more into that Dracula character and kind of see maybe a format that we are a little more used to, without spoiling anything. So I do think we see this journey of the Dracula character as well, which as reflecting, coming right out of theater, and then as going to this review, I had time to kind of sit with it and think of that character, and I was like, well, this portion of it did seem pretty well thought out to me. And I think that's kind of, again, going back to all these characters, I think they were handled really well. I think, given some sort of connective tissue, all these different backstories and all this interplay between all these crew members of different walks of life. But, I think it did keep me entertained. Yeah, it did drag. I mean, not drag, but, you did feel that lingering a little bit longer than I thought you would. But, I felt like they were trying to build some sort of tension. I think sometimes it did fall flat in terms of the conversation, though.
And yeah, I think the best way you can really sum up this film is that it's one of those movies that will be remembered for its characters, will be remembered for the wonderful character actors and the performances they give. I think that the CGI elements to this are going to be dated pretty quickly. And I think that the practical effects, though, I really think they will stand out. Especially there's a couple of really great shots of Dracula, again, which is why I think it turns into such a mixed bag when it comes to him, because it's so back and forth. But yeah, I think that overall this was definitely worth the wait. It's definitely something that I was excited for going into it, and I'm happy I saw it coming out. Now, it's not something that I said like I absolutely adored, fell in love with, and want to sit here and just rave about, but it's worth owning and it's worth checking out, and it's definitely something I will be revisiting, because again, I think that the concept and the story here is really strong. The characters are really good, and I can forgive some, wonky CGI just for getting to spend a little bit more time with the crew of the Demeter.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm going to second that as well. CGI is a little wonky. This does run the risk of being a little dated in the next few years. I think Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark also kind of runs that risk as well. It's just it's a game you play. The more CGI you want to use, the less I think the film's going to age. And so... other than that, I think, everything else here is definitely worth going to the theater to check out. It's an interesting concept. It offers something new and fresh, I think, into a subgenre that has told so many different stories. And, we got a lot of great vampire stories on the horizon with Nosferatu. I think this would be a fun companion piece to kind of get you in that mindset. A lot of great characters, a fun space to live in. I think you're going to have a lot of fun at the theater. Yes, there are some points where it does sit a little longer than it should. I don't feel that it overstays its welcome in any sense. But yeah, by the time you get to that third act, I think you're going to get what you came to see. For the most part. And then I think it does leave you on an interesting note to kind of leave you wanting some more.
I agree. I definitely think where they end off, the potential is very exciting. I'll at least leave it like that. But, do I think that that'll spawn in anything? Probably not, but the nugget is there and it's enjoyable. Yes. It's nice to have that in your head. But alrighty, guys, I think it's going to wrap us up for our review of the last voyage of the Demeter. Again, definitely let us know how you thought of it when you go see it this weekend, or if you've, just caught this review a few months later and it's out on Blu-ray, whatever, and you're checking it out. What are your thoughts on this film? How do you feel about Dracula? Are we way off base? Do you think he looks fantastic? Is this your your dream Dracula per se, or do you agree with us that it might have been a little too far in a few places? But yeah, other than that, we got a lot of great stuff up on the channel. You know, I just got to see this really interesting Bigfoot movie, Summoning the Spirit. Did a review on it. That's all I'm gonna say. Watch it. Maybe not the movie, but watch that. And you know, then we got that going on. You know, we did just talk about King on Screen, the latest horror doc, all about Stephen King and his adaptations and everything that's spawned because of his wonderful books. So that was really great. I also got to interview the director for that, so that is up on the channel as well. And yeah, just a lot of great stuff on the horizon. A lot of big announcements coming down the pipeline here soon. And yeah, more horror reviews, news, and all kinds of stuff. Keep it right here on Splattercast. But alrighty, guys, it's going to wrap us up. So until next time, I am Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.